Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to tonight's webinar. My name is Adam, and I'll be your moderator. Tonight, we're discussing PPO insurance strategies for 2022. Phylip Curtis from Unitas Dental joins us once again to give us all the details. If you have any questions, please drop them into the Q&A section of your control panel, and we'll answer them live at the end of the webinar. Schein is not offering CE credit for viewing or attending this presentation live or on demand, and this webinar is sponsored by Unitas Dental. Phylip, take it away.
All right, Adam, thanks. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. I know this is a busy week for you. It's the last week of the year, our second to last week of the year, so I appreciate you taking the time. Hopefully, everybody can hear me okay. And like Adam said, get comfortable with the Q&A section down below or the chat window, whatever is best for you, and put any questions that you have in there. We're going to have a Q&A section at the end of the webinar today, and we generally have quite a few questions, so feel free to ask those as they come up, and then we'll address those as we go through. So, but let's go ahead and get started today. I know we're going to have a couple of practices jump on here over the next couple of minutes, but really what we're going to go over today are some really important PPO insurance strategies for the coming year. I just want to give a quick introduction to myself. My name is Phylip Curtis, like Adam said, from Unitas Dental. Here's my contact information, my phone number and email. If you have any questions after the webinar and you want to reach out to me, be sure to write those down, and I will send those out again after the webinar is complete. But let's go over a little bit about Unitas and why we're even talking about these PPO strategies. So at Unitas, we've been helping practices for quite a bit of time, almost over 10 years. We've worked with thousands of practices. We've been in all 50 states. Right now, we represent over 1,200 dental practices nationwide. We're located in Mesa, Arizona, but we work across the country, and we've got over 65 insurance experts on our team. And this is all we do, is to help practices negotiate reimbursement rates, optimize their participation, and we also help them get credentialed with insurance at the same time. So what are we going to cover today? So the key PPO strategies for the coming year really are going to revolve around how to increase your PPO reimbursements. This has always been a pretty popular topic for us. That's why we're in business, obviously, is to help increase reimbursement rates. But we found that more and more after the beginning of the pandemic, a lot of practices have felt the pressure on the reimbursement rates, whether that's because they haven't been able to treat as many patients, or maybe they're treating 10 times the amount of patients, or maybe their costs have gone up because of the PPE and things like that. So you may be coming to this webinar for a couple different reasons, but I'm guessing it's probably because you're looking to increase your reimbursement rates and have some help with your insurances over the coming year. So what we're going to talk about today are three key strategies on how to increase those reimbursements, because by and large, there's a lot of things you can do to help your practice, but really at the core of any business and the core of any practice comes down to the profit that you make per customer, which in dentistry all comes down to the reimbursement rate that you get paid from the insurance company. And what we found is anywhere from 70 to 85% of most practices, those patient bases are coming through PPO insurance, which I'm sure you're saying, of course they are. That's how it is for our practice. So for us today, we're going to talk about what our framework is for increasing reimbursement rates for the clients we work with. Part of the cool thing about this presentation is we've been helping practices do this for over 10 years, and we've had so much demand. There's a lot of practices that want to work with us, but either won't or can't, or there's a lot of practices that want to work with us and we can't help everybody. So one of the purposes of this webinar is us kind of opening up the guide, opening up the playbook, so to say, about how to negotiate and how to increase your reimbursement rates on your own. And then at the end of the webinar, we'll talk about if it's something you're interested in working with us on. We'll talk about some opportunities there. But first, we're going to talk about how to understand your PPO participation and your current reimbursements, how that affects your ability to negotiate. Next, we're going to talk about some of the top PPO negotiation tactics that you can use. And then lastly, we'll talk about how you can maximize those opportunities if you're going to approach the process at all. So a lot of this information is pretty in-depth and detailed. I'm trying to stay into the details today. I won't go off into too many stories, but a lot of this is pretty helpful and tactile information. So I want you to take down notes, get out a notepad and paper. Luckily, Schein is recording this webinar, so you should be able to see the recording pretty soon afterwards. So if you're watching this and thinking, oh man, I'd love my office manager to see this or my dentist to see this, we have it recorded. But let's jump into key number one, which is understanding your PPO participation and reimbursements and why that's an important strategy, and also why it's crucial if you're wanting to increase your reimbursement rates. This is probably one of the most overlooked concepts in terms of practices wanting to increase their reimbursements. They go straight to trying to negotiate and they kind of ignore this concept. It's kind of like if you were to have a patient come in the door and you went straight to just drilling into their teeth without having any x-rays or any evaluation or referral. That's kind of what this all comes down to, is understanding what the situation is. So first, we're going to talk about how to discover and map out your PPO participation. We're going to talk about how to receive and document your actual fee schedules. And then we're going to talk about how to compare and repair any UCR or reimbursement discrepancies. So again, a lot of good information here. Be sure to take notes and we'll jump right in. So first and foremost, how do you discover and map out your PPO participation? Why does it really matter? First, we're going to talk about the different participation types. Then we'll review how to collect that participation and by doctor from each insurance company and what the steps are. First, let's go over what different types of participation there is with each insurance company. Now, this is information I've covered quite a few times. I've done this similar presentation quite a few times, but every time I do it, I always have practice to say, wow, nobody's ever really explained it like that to me. I didn't understand that PPOs could do this scenario. So even if you understand this participation, bear with me because it's pretty important and fundamental. It's foundational in order to negotiate with your insurances. So first and foremost, participation type number one is what we call a direct contract. If you're under a direct contract with an insurance company, what that means is you've credentialed directly with that insurance, you've agreed to their reimbursement rates, you've also agreed to treat their patients, and you filled out a credentialing application, and they're the one that is paying your claim. So a direct contract would be, I credentialed with Aetna, for example. I agreed to Aetna's reimbursement fee schedule. I treat Aetna patients. I send the claim to Aetna. Aetna pays the claim. That's a direct contract. Most insurance companies have the ability to be under direct contract. Most dental practices think they have direct contracts with all of their insurances. However, you will quickly find out that that's not the case. In many scenarios, direct contracts evolve into PPO to PPO leasing arrangements, or those stem off from them. So what is a leasing arrangement? Typically how it starts is you've directly contracted with a given insurance carrier. So in this scenario, let's pretend like this orange insurance is still Aetna. You agreed to Aetna's rates, you credentialed with Aetna, you've been treating Aetna patients for years. Well, Aetna, along with almost every other insurance company in the country, has the power to lease you out to other insurances. So what does that mean? That means that they can go create a partnership with somebody like Guardian, who may not have you in network. You may have never credentialed with Guardian or ever agreed to treat their patients and get paid in network. However, if they create a partnership with Guardian, what that means is Guardian can borrow you through the Aetna contract you've already signed. So once they establish that relationship, a Guardian patient may show up at your practice. You may treat them and send the claim into Guardian, assuming that it was going to be out of network. But surprise, it's actually in network and it's paid not only by Guardian, but it's paid by Guardian using Aetna's reimbursement rates. Okay, so if you find out all of a sudden you're magically in network with a PPO that you didn't think you were, it's because they likely are leasing you through somebody else. Or if your reimbursement rates substantially change over time from what they were maybe 6 months or a year ago, it's probably because you've changed into a new leasing arrangement and you weren't aware of it. PPO to PPO leasing is a pretty common strategy for insurance companies to use because they want to keep you in network. Obviously, when you're in network, the patient's more happy because either a portion or all of their claim is paid, which is why they take these strategies and borrow you from other insurance carriers. That's why PPO to PPO leasing happens and why it's important. Now, why it matters in terms of negotiations is because if you're being leased and you're not directly contracted with a given insurance company, but you're being leased through somebody else, the strategies that we or you would use to negotiate will be vastly different than if you were just simply under a direct contract. Just like if a patient comes in and they need a root canal, you're not going to just give them a filling. You need to give them a root canal or refer them out for a root canal. It's the same thing here. If you're being leased, your treatment or your strategy will be a lot different than if you're participating under a direct contract. Hopefully that makes sense to everybody. The last type of participation is what we consider called umbrella networking. Umbrella networking is kind of a phrase that's been coined. It's not technically an official phrase. One of the most official names for an umbrella network company is a third-party administrator, or they're more or less an aggregator of insurance companies. Umbrella networks like Connection Dental or GEHA or Dynamax or Carrington or Zealous typically don't have patients. They usually don't have patients that have cards that have their names on them. So you'll never see a card-carrying Dynamax patient or a card-carrying Connection patient because they're not technically insurance companies. They don't provide insurance plans to patients. What they are is a network, quote unquote, an umbrella. They go and create multiple relationships with other insurance companies. And then when you join an umbrella network like Dynamax or Connection, you obviously know that they have their own fee schedule. That's probably why you credentialed with them. However, what happens when you join an umbrella network is they turn around and they shoot your information out to all the PPOs under their umbrella. And so you may now fall a network underneath a group of PPOs. They'll all be funneled through that umbrella network's fee schedule. So in this scenario, let's say you're now credentialed with 3 insurances, MetLife, Cigna, and Principal, and they're all being funneled through Connection Dental. So what does that mean? Well, all those PPOs are still going to pay your claims in network. They're all going to still directly send you a claim, but the reimbursement rate that they're going to pay you on is Connection's reimbursement rate, because that's how they have you in network through that participation type. Hopefully that makes sense to you guys. Again, why I'm going into this detail is because if one or more of your doctors at your practice is in network with an insurance through an umbrella or through a leasing arrangement or through a direct contract, that's going to influence what strategies you can and you can't use if you're trying to increase your reimbursements. The same goes for if we're doing this or if you're doing this. It's fundamental in order to know what you can do and what you can't do. Okay. Again, just to bring that point home, understanding how you individually participate as a doctor is going to tell you what you can or can't do in order to negotiate and optimize. Now, once you have that information from the insurance companies, you can also call to collect your fee schedules. However, let's go back and review how to gather participation from an insurance. So again, what I'm going over today is the exact framework that we follow with all the doctors that we represent. If we were working to negotiate and increase your reimbursement rates, we would follow these same steps. If you want to do it yourself, these are the exact steps that you could follow. We're opening the playbook up to you. This is exactly what we do. So what would happen is you would call provider relations at each insurance company, and you would want to confirm your participation per doctor, per location. So you're going to call the insurance company and say, hey, I want to confirm my doctor's participation. If you have 2 doctors at one location, you want to put it into a spreadsheet and put 2 columns, one for each doctor, and then a row for each insurance company. The reason why you want to designate it by doctor is because the participation type can differ by doctor. Just because Dr. John and Dr. Smith may be both owners, or one's an associate or one's an owner, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if they're both credentialed with Aetna under the same tax ID. Dr. John may be a network under a direct contract, and Dr. Smith may be a network with Aetna through the Guardian arrangement. So just because they work at the same practice, have the same tax ID, doesn't guarantee that they're participating the same. That's why you want to confirm your participation per doctor. So you contact the PPO. I'm going to talk to you at the end of the webinar. I'll talk to you about how you can get your hands on one of our up-to-date contact lists for each insurance company. But if you were to call the insurance, you'd use a spreadsheet, collect on that info. You'd confirm, how is my doctor participating with you? They would respond with he or she is either under a direct contract, is being leased through a specific insurance, or is through an umbrella insurance, or is out of network. So you want to know how they're participating, so how they're in network, what the effective date of that contract is, and then we'll get to this next step, but what the fee schedule is that they're paying you on now. So they should be able to answer all those questions, both the participation and the fee schedule. Okay. Now, why do we need to collect the fee schedule? So while you're calling provider relations, they should be able to provide you with your current fee schedule per doctor, per location. And then once you receive that back, you can update your Dentrix or your practice management software with the current fee schedule. That way, number one, your treatment planning is more effective. And number two, when you're negotiating or we're negotiating, we know what numbers we're starting with. We're working off of old data. That's pretty hard to negotiate accurately. All right. Now, before you attempt to negotiate or improve your reimbursement rates, one of the biggest problems that you can solve to put all the chips in your favor is to repair UCR and reimbursement discrepancies. So what does that mean? The basic principle is there should never be a situation where you have a UCR, which is your regular office fee, your sticker price for your procedure. You should never have a UCR that's at or below your highest reimbursing PPO fee schedule. Okay. Number one, for example, if you had a procedure that was priced at $85 for your office fee, but you have an insurance company willing to pay you $100 for that same procedure, how much do you think you're going to get paid by that insurance? Are you ever going to get $100? Probably not. And the reason why is because a PPO is never going to want to pay you above your UCR, both for their own system and for the formula they want to show to the patient. They need to show a discount. So they stick with your sticker price, and then they take a discount off that. That's how those reimbursement fee schedules are calculated, is assuming a discount off of your UCR. So how do you find that out? Well, you can start by gathering all those fee schedules from the insurance companies, entering them into a spreadsheet across maybe your top 30 to 35 main procedures, the ones that are the most important to you. What you'll do is put in one column all the main procedures, and in the next column, you'll plug in your UCRs. And then each sequential column, you'll plug in the associated reimbursement from each insurance company. So Aetna, Cigna, Delta, Guardian, everybody will get plugged into this spreadsheet. Now, what you'll want to do is you'll want to look at each row by row. Do I have any UCRs that are lower than any of these reimbursements? If they are, then you want to make sure that you increase them. Typically, the margin that an insurance company assumes is about 30% off of the UCR. So if you have a UCR that on average is basically the same as your average reimbursement, you probably want to consider raising that UCR. Now, to ensure that your UCRs are not only above your PPO reimbursements, but are also just generally competitive for your area, you want to make sure that you're using any available percentile-based analysis tool to make sure that you're competitive against the peers in your area. So for example, Henry Schein provides one of those analysis tools. We also provide an analysis through Schein if you work with us to ensure and show you where your UCRs are at in a percentile basis for your zip code. Again, the reason why that's important is because healthy UCRs or high UCR office fees correlate with higher reimbursements and vice versa. If your UCRs are typically low, your reimbursement rates are typically low. Okay. That's one of the best things you can do to put the chips in your favor if you're going to attempt to negotiate. There's nothing that you can do more to shoot yourself in the foot than to approach the negotiation process with UCRs that are below what that PPO is willing to reimburse other peers in your area. So that's number one. All right. So what we've covered today so far is understanding the PPO participation, how to collect it, current reimbursements. Now let's talk about the top PPO negotiation tactics. What we're going to cover are how to ensure you're not wasting time on the wrong procedures. Next thing is going to be how to approach the PPO negotiation process. And then lastly, how to compare offers that are received back from the insurance company. All right. Just a reminder, this process we're going through right now is the exact framework that we at Unitas have been using for 10 years, that we've perfected, that we know that the process is supposed to be like this. This is what yields the best result. Again, we would love to work with any practice out there. However, not every practice either wants to work with us or can work with us. So this guide, this playbook is us kind of opening it all up to the masses so you can understand what the process should be. That way, if you're going to implement it on your own, you have all of the steps and the pieces that you need in order to implement it in your practice. All right, let's talk about ensuring that you don't waste time, because nobody likes to waste time. So one of the most important things is to understand which procedure codes actually matter for your practice. The reason why is when you're making analysis decisions from offers that come back from an insurance company, it can get pretty easy to get distracted because there's so many different procedures a practice can do. However, we found that the average practice, anywhere from 90 to 95% of all the revenue you make in a given year comes from the same 30 to 35 procedure codes. And again, you're probably not surprised by that, but every practice is slightly different. So what you need to do is figure out which procedure codes generate the majority of your revenue. We've really found that anywhere from 20 to 35 is kind of the magic number. We stick with 35. We found that that's kind of the best in order to make the most educated analysis decisions. But the question is how do we find that out as a practice? Well, you can export what's called an annual production summary from virtually any practice management software, whether you're on Dentrix or anybody else. They all have instructions or support articles on how to export what's called an annual production summary. All the pieces that are most important in that report are basically a list of the procedures. The second column should show you how many times you performed that procedure in that given 12-month period. And the third column should show you how much revenue or production was generated from that procedure mix. Okay. Once you have all three of those columns within a 12-month period, you're going to enter that data into a spreadsheet and sort the procedures by the highest grossing production. So you take the third column and you'd sort it by a descending value. That would virtually take that whole list and tell you out of all the procedures, which are the ones that generate the most revenue for me. Then you're going to look at that and determine your top 30 to 35 procedure codes. Why those are important is because on a couple more steps I'll talk about down the road is we want to make sure that when we're looking at offers from the insurance companies, that we're evaluating not just the procedures that matter to us, but how frequently we do those procedures. So there's two pieces of information that are important there. They generate a lot of revenue for us, so we want to make sure we're focusing on them when we're negotiating, but we also do them quite frequently. So we'll get into that in a little bit. All right. Once you have that data set of those top 35 procedure codes, you're golden. That's kind of your starting point for the rest of the analysis you'll perform. Now, when you're ready to approach the PPO negotiation process, you feel confident that you know what your participation is per insurance company, then you can approach the negotiation process. However, there's a couple points that you want to know. First and foremost, it's important to understand that most insurance companies will consider negotiating every 2 to 3 years. So if you just started your practice a year ago, most PPOs will consider that the starting point of your contract, and many of them will consider negotiating until it's been anywhere from 2 to 3 years. And so, or if you've negotiated a year or and a half or 2 years ago and you got a new increased offer, a lot of a lot of PPOs will consider that that's the starting point and they won't consider negotiating for 2 to 3 years. So know that when you're approaching the process. So make sure that you're consistent in reaching out on the timetables that make sense. And then you're going to reach out to provider relations or any representative that you have contact info for and request what's called a fee schedule increase. So if you reach out to the representative you worked with in the past or provider relations and say, I'm unhappy with my reimbursements and I'd like to request a fee schedule increase, that should trigger the right alarms to get you to the right person. Now, however, when they respond back to you, you may get a variance of responses, right? You might get a, hey, we're not increasing offers right now, or we're not sure if that's something that we're going to do for a couple more months, or maybe the PPO won't give you an offer back in general. You could get a variety of offers. Some PPOs have a history of negotiating frequently, some rarely negotiate, some never negotiate. Delta Dental historically has been one of those insurance companies that rarely, if ever, negotiates. In the 10 years that we've been doing this for practice, I think we've maybe seen it 2 or 3 times out of thousands and thousands of attempts. A couple of the other carriers that have been a little bit more rare to negotiate have been typically like MetLife or United Concordia. They've turned some corners in the last couple of years, so they may be willing to negotiate with you. Same with some of the other big carriers. However, if it's been more than 2 to 3 years, it's worth the attempt to negotiate with any given insurance company. The most important thing, though, is paying attention to your PPO participation. When you've gathered that participation, if you found that you're in network with Aetna, but you're in network with them through a Sun Life, who do you need to negotiate with? Should you negotiate with Aetna or do you negotiate with Sun Life? Well, if you're in network with Aetna through Sun Life and through Sun Life's fee schedule, the person you need to negotiate with first is Sun Life. If you negotiate with Sun Life, their fee schedule is the one that would increase, and that would improve the Aetna patients. That's why it's important to pay attention to your PPO participation. Now, in a couple more slides, we'll get into pitting offers against different insurance companies, maybe comparing Sun Life's offer to Aetna's or Connections versus Carrington. So we'll talk about what we call optimization. But for right now, in terms of negotiation, it's important to realize, number one, you typically have a timetable every 2 to 3 years. Number two, you need to know what to say and who to reach out to. So there's your answer on step number 2. And then number 3, you need to pay attention to participation. So that way you're not wasting time in trying to negotiate something that doesn't exist. All right. Now, when you're getting offers back from an insurance company, if they actually respond and provide you with an increased offer, that's fantastic. Now you just need to know, how competitive is this offer? Is it even worth taking? How do I know I'm making the right decision? So using the previous steps, again, you want to make sure that you've identified those top 35 procedure codes that have the highest quantity and production. Again, you're going to go back to probably the same spreadsheet, open up a new tab, plug in those top 35 procedure codes, plug in those UCRs. And then what you're going to do is you're going to plug in what you're getting paid for those 35 procedures right now on the fee schedules that you just collected. And then you'll plug in the reimbursement rates on the fee schedule they just offered to you. Again, what you want to compare is, how does this new fee schedule compare against what my current reimbursements are, right? You can do the math to see how much of a percentage increase it is or a dollar difference it is. And what you want to do is pay most attention to annual frequency. So you may want to put into the offer how frequently you do those procedures within a given year. The reason why that matters, because sometimes when an insurance company responds back with an increased fee schedule, they may increase some codes and decrease some codes. They may increase your restorative and decrease your preventative or something like that. So if that's the case, you want to pay attention, because on its face value, if you're looking just at dollar per dollar, a couple of decreases might not seem like that big of a deal if they're maybe $5 or $10, but maybe your crown went up by $100 or your Profi went up by $50, and so you're super excited about that. But it's important to know, how frequently do we do these procedures in a given year, because it's very possible that a $100 procedure increase could be outweighed by a $5 procedure decrease, depending on how frequently you do the procedure. So if the $5 procedure decrease was on your Profis and you do 3,000 of those a year, and the $100 increase was on your dentures and you only do 30 of those a year, that could be outweighed, right? So again, it comes down to, depending on how frequently you do each procedure code, you're going to want to make sure you're calculating the math and you're evaluating the offer. The next thing you want to do is take a look at that fee schedule in comparison to your other PPOs. If it's relatively higher, than what your other PPOs are paying, anywhere from 3 to 5 or 10% higher than your current reimbursements across other insurances, that's a pretty good fee schedule. The last thing you want to do is understand that once you accept the fee schedule offer and you sign it, it's going to take the PPO some time to process that. So it's not going to be immediate. Obviously, nothing is immediate in the world, especially with insurance. But once they process it, it could take anywhere from 30 to 90 days to go into effect, but they should provide you with an effective date. Once you have an effective date, you want to audit your EOBs after accepting the new fee schedule to make sure that you're getting paid on the new fee schedule. Again, that seems pretty self-explanatory, but I guess you wouldn't be surprised if I told you how many practices currently aren't getting paid according to what they agreed to when they credentialed, let alone what they agreed to when they negotiated. Again, participation can change, but mistakes can also happen. You can't guarantee that it's going to go into effect. So you want to make sure you're auditing the claims and verifying that you're getting paid correctly. Again, just to repeat, these are the processes and steps that we carry out when we're doing this for a practice, because we've learned our lessons in 10 years. We know what to do, what not to do, and this is super important. Okay, so those are your top negotiation tactics. Now, how do you maximize your negotiation opportunities? We'll talk about how to ensure your PPO fees are competitive for your area. We'll talk about how to minimize optimization and the risks and maximize the benefits of optimization. And then lastly, we'll go over how to calculate your return on investment if you're going to attempt negotiations at all, right? First and foremost, let's go over how to ensure your offers are competitive for your area. If you're going to attempt the negotiation process and try to increase your fee schedules, it can be pretty scary because most practices either know this or now you know that once you accept a fee schedule offer from an insurance company, you'll typically be locked into that fee schedule for a minimum of 2 years. So when I say locked in, that doesn't mean that you can't ever terminate a relationship with an insurance. You can always terminate. However, it just means that you likely won't get that fee schedule increased for a minimum of 2 years or even be considered to be increased. So what does that mean? Once you've accepted and signed a fee schedule, it's pretty much set in stone for quite a bit of time. So if you know that, you want to make sure that whatever you're accepting is competitive for your area and is a good offer. How do you know that it's going to be competitive for your area? All you can do at this point is compare it against what you're currently being paid or compare it against your current other insurance company fee schedules. However, one of the advantages that Unitas brings to the table is we negotiate on behalf of thousands of practices a year. So we have the data to compare your offers to determine how competitive it is for your area. Not only that, but obviously we've got high-level dedicated insurance contacts that many practices don't have access to. So somebody that's higher than provider relations that either has the ability to negotiate at all or has access to fee schedule offers that most reps don't have access to. We also can not just that, but negotiate on your behalf. So we bring the leverage of the practices we work with, and we bring all the experiences of how much and how often we've negotiated with practices across the country. And we represent so many that we bring a lot to the table for an insurance company. Now, not only that, we have a highly trained team. Obviously, we've got years of experience. We have a proven track record. So if you want to ensure your PPO offers are competitive for your area, you need to work with somebody like Unitas who has access and who has worked with multiple practices across the country. How else would we know if it's competitive unless we can compare it against other fee schedules that have been paid? Now, one of the things we do is we don't share those fee schedules with you. We're not going to turn around and give you all the fee schedules of the doctors down the street. That breaks confidentiality agreements with our clients. That breaks confidentiality agreements with the insurance companies. Bringing us on as your third party to represent you allows us to bring that leverage to the table when working with an insurance company and the information and expertise to the table. Helps us make educated decisions. Because it may be more profitable to be direct with that insurance company if they give us a good fee schedule offer, or it may be more profitable to switch from a direct contract with Guardian, for example, to being a network with Guardian through Carrington or Guardian through Zealous. Those options are things that will help you evaluate. Those all come down to what we call optimization. So based on your current participation, we can help identify any arrangement that may be more profitable than just negotiating with a given insurance company. So like I just said, many PPOs have multiple paths to participating with them. You're simply only under one of those paths. So we have helped thousands of practices to optimize that participation, and we've helped them lead to higher reimbursements. We understand how to shift the participation, but we also know the risks and the timeline involved to do that. So let me give you an example. Let's go back to the initial example with the orange insurance being Aetna and the green insurance being Guardian. So what do I mean by optimization? Well, you've got two patient bases here, both of which are being funneled through one fee schedule, which is Aetna's fee schedule. So the question is how do we get both insurance companies to come onto the best fee schedule possible? Well, we may attempt negotiations with Aetna first to try to get that fee schedule to increase. If it increases, then now both insurance companies have risen because they're both paying you through the same fee schedule. After we're done with that, we may approach Guardian and say, hey, Guardian, we've got the doctor or doctors here. They may want to be under a direct contract with you. So what's the best offer that you have on the table? In that situation, Guardian may come back with a fee schedule that's even higher than what Aetna has. And you may ask, well, why would they want to pay us on a higher fee schedule? That seems like that's the opposite of what an insurance would want to do. The reason, and the answer is not necessarily. A lot of insurances are willing to pay you on a better fee schedule if you'll switch to a direct contract. Well, why? Because a lot of times they have to pay to lease you from other insurances. It's not free to establish this type of relationship with another carrier. Just because they're two insurance companies doesn't mean that they're best friends. They don't just share doctors with each other. They typically have to have an established business relationship and purchase doctors. So in that scenario, it may be more expensive for them to lease you from another insurance than it would be for you to get paid under a direct contract. And unless somebody approaches them with that offer, they may not be willing to offer that higher fee schedule until you attempt to switch to a direct contract. Okay. So in that scenario, if Guardian comes back with a fee schedule that's higher than Aetna's, you may want to switch your participation. So we can help you with that. We can switch the credentialing to make sure that you're shifted to a direct contract, or vice versa. The example stays the same with all carriers. Almost every insurance company has multiple ways to participate. So Guardian namely has anywhere from 5 to 6 or 7 participation types. You can participate with Guardian directly through Aetna, through Sun Life, through Connection, through Zealous. There's lots of insurances that partner with them. Same with almost every other insurance carrier. So that's what we're going to look into. What's the best way to participate with Guardian? What's the best way to participate with Aetna or Cigna or MetLife? Because what you're on now is only one of a couple or multiple options. So there's got to be something out there that's potentially better, or maybe even more than one option out there that's better than what you're currently on. That's why we not only help you negotiate what you're currently being paid on and negotiate the current contract, but we also try to beat the contract by looking at other paths to participation. So hopefully that makes sense to everybody. So that's how we help minimize those risks, is because we've run these optimization strategies for years. We understand how they work. We know how to shift participation, and the differences matter because at every state level and every insurance company level, the way that you optimize can change. There's restrictions. There may be out of network time depending on how you've shifted. There may be some risks involved in terms of specific plan levels will shift, but other ones won't. So I never encourage practices to attempt to optimize on their own just because they know that, oh, I don't have to be a network with Guardian directly. I can be a network with them through Sun Life. Doesn't mean that you should go around sending out opt-out letters or terminations and hoping that those things will shift. Optimization is not exactly a science. There's a lot of moving parts, but because we've ran these strategies multiple times, we understand the risks. We understand what it will take to get it shifted. And so that's why I don't encourage practices to try this on their own. I encourage you to use somebody like Unitas who's been doing this for years. Negotiations is a lot like pulling out a tooth. You probably shouldn't pull out your own tooth, but you probably can. Optimization is like a root canal. There should be never a situation where you should do your own root canal. So again, optimization does yield pretty good reimbursements. A lot of times for our clients, optimization is where we get the biggest increases. So with the greatest risk comes the greatest reward, but that's what will help you evaluate if you were to work with us. The last thing is, how do you calculate your return on investment from negotiations? Well, for over 10 years, we've been doing this. We've been negotiating and optimizing. We've implemented this exact same strategy for dentists across the country. So we can help project your return on investment through our average results. So when we work with the practice, we track all the results we get. We track all the fee schedule increases. So we know on average what our increase rate is. So for our average client, it's about 10% on the fee schedules we either negotiate or optimize. Our above average rate is about 18% and below average is around 4%. So how does that translate into how much revenue does that make a practice? Well, it comes down to how much production you do on an annual basis. If you do $10 million a year in production, a 10% increase is going to be a heck of a lot larger than if you do $100,000 a year, obviously, right? But the average practice does typically around $1 million, 5 days a week, full-time. 1 or 2 doctors usually does about $1 million in production. Generally, about half of that production comes from insurance companies that we're either able to negotiate or optimize. So if $500,000 of that, or $500,000, is increased by an average rate of 10%, that's how you get to a $50,000 average return. So here's some case studies. We've worked with practices all across the country, but we worked with Dr. Morgan in North Carolina. 5 negotiated contracts, 2 networks were optimized, over $64,000 in additional revenue for him. Dr. Baker in Texas, it was another 5 PPO contracts and 3 optimizations. That was $79,000 increase on his bottom line revenue. And then Dr. Young in Florida had an more fantastic result, 7 negotiated contracts, 4 networks, and over $100,000 in additional revenue. All right, so let's review what we covered today. So again, the whole purpose of me going through this today is to help not only educate you, but to help you understand that this is real, this is possible. Negotiations happens every day, optimizations happen every day. You don't have to work with Unitas. This process is real and it works. If you follow these strategies, you can get results in your practice, but you need to understand and follow them one by one. So you need to understand your participation. You need to understand your reimbursements. You got to document those actual reimbursements and fix any discrepancies. You have to make sure you follow those tactics for negotiation. You got to focus on the right procedures and approach the negotiation process correctly. Compare those offers, making sure that you understand what you're signing up for. And lastly, understand the value of maximizing the opportunity by working with somebody like Unitas. So that way you can make sure your fee schedules are competitive, that you're minimizing optimization risks, and that you're calculating your return on investment if you're going to even take the time to invest at all. Okay. So hopefully that's been super helpful information for you guys. But I'm sure many of you feel like this right now, which is this is just a complete information overload. I love this picture because this reminds me of my 5-year-old daughter. And I don't think she's tried this yet, but I definitely did when I was little. But this is a lot of information. And again, what's going to happen after the webinar today is, especially this week or any week out of the year, but this, I know for most of you, this is the busiest week or 2 weeks of the year, which is everybody's coming in trying to utilize their benefits. So you're going to hop off the webinar today. I know it's late. You're probably going to go grab dinner, run home, come back to the practice tomorrow, jump right into treating patients, or maybe you're already done for the week. So you're going to go off and hang out with your family. But immediately what's going to happen next year is you're going to go back to what you're regularly doing, which is treating patients and scheduling appointments. But your practice needs higher reimbursements. They need them now. Obviously, you needed them a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. So if it's okay, I want to make you an offer that will help you implement this strategy faster than trying to do it on your own. So I hope this presentation was helpful for you guys. And we're going to go into a Q&A section here in a little bit, but I want to make you a quick offer for those of you that have stuck around and watched the webinar today for a special offer on how to implement this specific strategy if we were to help you do this. So all you have to do is go to schedule a free PPO consultation with our team. What it is it's a free 30-minute consultation. It's not a sales pitch. It's exactly that. It's a 30-minute consultation. What we're going to do is we're going to review your insurances to understand if you're even a good fit for the service. We're going to review your recent negotiation history, how many locations you have, what your current setup is, to understand if we're a good fit for you and if you're a good fit for us. We'll calculate your potential return on investment and identify which of the services you're best suited for. We have a couple different services depending on what type of practice you are. But all you need to do is go to this website. It's www.ppoguide.com/go. So if you go to ppoguide.com/go, it should take you straight to a consultation page. You can schedule a free time. We may have some time available this week. We're definitely running low on the holiday, but we'll definitely have some slots open at the beginning of January. And then we'll be able to chat with you on the phone. If you schedule this free consultation, not only will we help you understand if there's opportunities for you or whether or not you should do it on your own, but we'll also give you these 3 awesome limited time bonuses that should help you either do this better on your own or be a better practice and help you solve a lot more insurance problems. Okay. So here's my offer to you. If you schedule this consultation and complete it with us, all you got to do is book the time, complete the consultation, and afterwards we'll send you these bonuses. The first thing we're going to give you is our PPO provider relations master contact list. I can't stress enough how valuable this is. We don't typically give this away to clients. This is something that we're able to give to people who watch this webinar. We make hundreds, if not thousands of phone calls every month to PPO insurances across the country, not just the major ones, but the small ones, the Blue Cross, Blue Shields of every state, the Deltas of every state. So if you want to save yourself hours and hours of sitting on hold because you've called the wrong number or you clicked the wrong extension, if you want to be able to collect your participation faster by knowing which number to call, this provider relation contact list is the most accurate, up-to-date one that we have that we use internally for our own teams. That's easily $199 value. You're getting it absolutely free. All you have to do is go to ppoguide.com/go, book a time. Next thing you're going to get, I'm going to sweeten the pot, is our e-guide, which is the 35 most common insurance problems and how to avoid them. So after 10 years of us working with thousands and thousands of practices on insurance negotiations, as you would imagine, we get thousands of insurance or just dental related questions all the time. Once we start to work with a practice, develop a good relationship, lots of office managers or dentists kind of bend our ear to ask a question. 95% of those questions we either don't know the answer to or we can't help you with because it's not our specialty. However, we go out and try to find the answer or find the person that has the answer for you. So we've compiled 35 of the most commonly asked questions relating to insurance, and we've created an ebook for you with the responses and solutions on how to either avoid them or how to solve those problems. So whether it's down coding, balance billing, out of network benefits, info changes. So if you change tax ID or business name, how to add an associate to PPOs without making common mistakes, all of that and more. You can save yourself hours of trying to solve those frustrating problems. We've got kind of those best, most common problems for you in an ebook. You can download it, print it out, keep it on your desk, and make your life a whole lot easier. All for free. All you got to do is schedule that consultation. Last thing I'm going to give you is our internal tool that we use internally to run a fee schedule analysis. So this is the same tool that we use to analyze our clients' UCRs and fee schedules. So if you want to know if your UCR office fees are priced lower than your current reimbursements, or if you want to know how your reimbursements compare to your other insurances, or what your highest reimbursing insurance company is, all of that is possible through this easy to use online spreadsheet. It's literally a template. You can copy and paste it. You can download it into Excel or use it in Google Sheets. It's super easy. It has automated formulas, calculations, a whole little workbook to help you use it correctly. All of that's included. Again, this is an internal spreadsheet that we use that you can use on your own if you were to either A, negotiate on your own, or B, just want to know the answers to these questions, regardless of what you do. So again, what we're going to recap is you're going to get the free evaluation ROI projection call. All you got to do is go to ppoguide.com/go. You're going to get the e-guide, 35 of the most common insurance problems. You're going to get the PPO provider relations master contact list, the PPO fee schedule analysis tool, hours of saved time easily, and higher reimbursement rates if you work with us, easily over $997 value, all for free. Hopefully that's made this hour or so of time with me valuable. I want you guys all to schedule that call because at a minimum, we'll help you evaluate if, number one, this even needs to be attempted for your practice at all. And if we're a good fit for you, we'll let you know. And if not, and it makes more sense for you to approach it, that what works as well. We turn probably 20 to 30% of all of these consultations away because they're practices that aren't a great fit, which hopefully shows you that we're not trying to sign up any practice in the country. We want to make sure that we can help you and that you're a good fit for us. So we want to make sure that we've provided a consultation, not just a sales pitch to you. Okay. So go to www.ppoguide.com/go and you can book that consultation today. It's free. It's 30 minutes or less. It's a little screen share. You may be able to grab some slots this week before Christmas. Otherwise, we'll likely not be able to chat with you until the first week of January, which hopefully is okay with you. All right. So I'm going to leave that right there. And then let's open it up for Q&A. Adam, do we have any questions that have come in through? I don't know if I've seen any, but let me know if you have.
I do not see any either.
All right. Is anybody on the call? I know there's still a ton of you on here. Hopefully this has been helpful for you. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in through the Q&A window or the chat window, whatever is easiest for you. I've definitely
I'll get the ball rolling because we get this every Unitas webinar. But can you talk a little bit about Delta Dental and what they can and can't do?
Yeah, Adam knows all the common questions. You know, I've been doing this for almost over a year and a half. So everybody, give a quiet applause to Adam for being patient and hearing the same slide deck over and over. So we appreciate it. But yes, 100%, Adam. That's a super important question. Most practices are frustrated with their Delta Dental reimbursements. That's pretty common. Historically, over the 10 years we've been doing this, Delta Dental has been pretty unwilling to negotiate their PPO reimbursement rates. And that doesn't matter if you're Delta Premier or Delta PPO or just Delta Premier. It's pretty unlikely that they're going to be willing to negotiate with you. However, the more people that ask, the greater the chance of change. So we continue to encourage you to ask. If we work with you, we will continue to ask on your behalf. There potentially may be some changes in the future. I know that there's currently been some legal action that's happening in the scheme of in the realm of that with Delta, as far as I'm aware. So there may be some changes soon. We don't really know, but it's pretty unlikely that in the next year that Delta is going to really change. So just know that going into that the name of the game is trying to approach every other insurance company and attempt to either negotiate or optimize with them. All right, we got the ball rolling. Nice job. That worked. All right, Adam, what other Q&A questions do we have?
I did get some in. How beneficial would this be for an office that is 95% state Medicaid?
That's a great question. So if you're 95% state Medicaid, I'm guessing it's probably because you're in a demographic area where that's the majority of your patient base. I know my dad's a physical therapist, so just by the nature of what he's doing, most of his patients are in the geriatric demographic, and so he works a lot on Medicaid. So it's pretty hard for him to. He wants obviously as a physical therapist to get into PPO, but if you're a dental practice and that's really your heavy patient base, I'd say you got to do the math. If you're really truly 95% Medicaid, that leaves 5% under potentially PPOs. So you got to do the math. So if that's 5% of $1 million, right, that's 50 grand, give or take of production. That's potentially influenceable by negotiations. And if half of that comes from Delta, that's 25 grand. And if you got a 10% increase, that's about $2,500. So again, it just depends. And again, the ROI is annual. So you want to see those returns annually, especially if you stay on that same fee schedule. So I do talk to quite a few practices that are in your same boat that have a lot of Medicaid, Medicare. But what my typical rule of thumb is if you're trying to focus more on PPO patients and if you want to get away from being so densely concentrated with one specific patient type, whether that's Medicaid, Medicare, or even just Delta. I talked to a lot of practices that have 90 or 80% of their practice is Delta. And so one of the first steps to putting more eggs in different baskets is making sure that you're getting paid the maximum reimbursement for those PPOs. So that way you have the margin to advertise more effectively to the patient bases that you're trying to attract. So if you're trying to get out of Medicare, Medicaid, you need to work with a marketing agency that can help you attract patients that are not in that demographic. It's a lot easier to market and to pay for marketing when you have the profit to do so. So what's the first step? Making sure that you're getting paid a competitive reimbursement for those insurance companies at the beginning. So I'd say it's probably worth getting on a consultation, but you want to look at your numbers and ask yourself, is it worth either talking to Unitas or approaching this on your own when that's really that small of a percentage of your patient base? And again, it all comes down to what your future plans are. If you don't really have any plans to expand your demographic, or you really can't based on where you're located, like if you're in the heart of a retirement community and up in the hills of Colorado, probably isn't very likely that you're going to attract a ton of PPO patients. So maybe it's not worth it. But that's why I'd say it's probably at least worth hopping on a call with us. We can see your area and talk to you about that. Either way. All right, next question.
Another common one we get most webinars. What is your average charge for your services?
Good question. So it depends on the practice. We have 3 different services. We have got one for established practices that are with lots of PPOs and never negotiated. We've got one for practice start. So practices that are credentialing for the first time. That one's a little bit more expensive. It depends because on the credentialing side, we're doing a ton of credentialing. And then one, what we call PPO flashlight is more of an evaluation one-time fee service. That's for if you're really, you're not like that other practice where you're having Medicaid, you're just mostly out of network and you want to see what it will look like to go in network with PPOs. So that one's a little bit more on the cheaper side, depending on what your practice is. So, but again, the price varies by location, by doctor, and what service you're on. So that's part of the result of the consultation is we'll evaluate what you're on, how many PPOs you're taking, how many locations you have. And then we have standard pricing per location per provider, depending on what category you fall in. And then they'll show you that pricing and help you explain and calculate that versus what your ROI would be and help you decide if it's something that you want to do, give you all that information. But it really just depends on the practice that you are.
Looks like, oh, here we go. Okay, we got a lot of questions now. When negotiating, does the number of patients that the practice has with that particular insurance matter?
In our experience, what we've found is not necessarily the number of patients, but potentially how many years you've been practicing and treating those patients. So a practice that's been in business for 5 or 10 years and has been treating a substantial amount of patients with a given insurance company may carry more weight because they do attribute more value to because you've been servicing so many of their patients for so long. But there hasn't really been a direct correlation. Just if you leverage and average everybody out in terms of the number of patients, most the variables that matter are, have you negotiated in the past? How high is your reimbursement rate now? So did they give you a really good fee schedule at the beginning when you signed up in comparison to what they're willing to pay now? And to be honest, most of the increases we get now typically don't come from a negotiation. So when we're negotiating with a carrier, those negotiation rates are typically pretty minimal because most PPOs don't want to come up a ton on their insurance rates. So that could be anywhere from like a 2, 5, or 10% increase when you're negotiating. Most of the larger increases that are 10, 15, 25% come from optimization. So for example, like that example I used earlier, if we went to Aetna right now and they negotiated with us, they may come back with, let's say they come back with a 2% increase or a 3% increase, which may not seem like that much, but it's an increase. However, Aetna also participates with other carriers like Zealous or Connection or Guardian or Sun Life. So many of those carriers may have a fee schedule that's way better than what Aetna can come up with. It may be 10 or 20% higher. So again, it's not so much those variables as much as it is all the pieces of the puzzle, which is how long have you been in practice? How many competitors do you have in your area? How long have you been treating patients? That's really what contributes to straight negotiations. But straight negotiations are typically pretty minimal. And the reason why our average is at 10% is because we do probably just as much optimization as we do negotiations, which pulls that average up. But it's just because it's a different strategy and it actually opens the door to more opportunity, which is a good thing. Because imagine a scenario where if you went to negotiate with somebody like Guardian right now, and you could only participate with them directly, like Delta, right? That's part of the reason why we believe Delta doesn't negotiate is because they don't lease out to other carriers. So it's basically you're either with us or you're out of network. And so in that scenario, but with every other carrier besides Delta, most of them partner with everybody else. So there's other ways you can participate. So if I go to Guardian will only come up so much on their fee schedule because they have their own internal budgets. But a Guardian has to lease you through somebody else, they'll have to lease you. So if Carrington or Zealous or Sun Life has a substantially better fee schedule than Guardian, it may be worth switching your participation. And that could very well be much higher than what Guardian could ever come up with if they were to negotiate on their own. And again, there's pros and cons to participating in different ways, but we'll help you evaluate that, whether that's on the consultation or if you were to work with us. We'll help you evaluate what those participation types are that exist in your area and what we would recommend for you. Okay.
Could I bill out my cash fees to get sense on what reimbursements pay higher than others? For example, when I bill out to GPA, they pay my cash fees versus Delta Dental, who has their set fee schedule.
So when you bill out, just to be clear, anytime you're sending out a claim to an insurance company, and you can ask any insurance company, but the way that the claim form is written, they want you to bill out your UCR or your cash fee. They want you to put that on the claim form because you're billing out and saying, here's my usual and customary fee. That way, when they paid the claim, they show to the patient, here's what the usual and customary rate was, which may have been $100, and we reimbursed $65 or $85 of that $100. So either now the patient remits the difference, or that's all that's going to be paid. Okay. So in any scenario, you should always be billing out your UCR to any carrier. When they pay you back, they're going to pay you according to the reimbursement rate that they agreed to. Now, if it's different, it's either because the reimbursement rate has changed or that individual patient's annual maximum has been met, or under their specific employer plan, there's restrictions on that specific procedure code. However, that's always listed on the EOB. So you should be able to see what their true reimbursement rate is through the EOB, also how it was paid in terms of participation, if there were any restrictions that were aligned with their employer plan or something like that. But just to be clear, UCRs should always be billed out to the PPO. Reimbursement rates will always be paid on the EOB and listed out as such. If you have any questions, you can always call the insurance company, but if you want to know how to bill out that claim, they'll always tell you to bill out your actual UCR to them. So hopefully that answers your questions. If whoever asked that, if they have further questions, they can shoot me an email or they can always schedule a call because we can talk about that as well.
How do you get reimbursed for your service if after the consultation we feel we would like to go with you? Is it percent based or flat fee?
That's a good question. So we feel really strongly about that pricing. So we charge a flat rate. We don't take any percentage. Our flat rate is based on the amount of work that's done. So and that's based off a number of locations and providers, because that's where the work expands for us. If you have multiple locations or multiple doctors, you have multiple paths to participation, that's why we charge as such. The reason why we don't take a percentage, number one, is for ethics. Number two, it's because we don't feel like we're owed a portion of that production, nor do we know or can we project how much production you're going to do. And then also, that's a conflict of interest with the insurance company that they don't particularly enjoy, is by taking a percentage of production. And again, that's not a number we can influence. We can only influence the rate of reimbursement. So to build our pricing structure off a percentage doesn't really make sense for us. That's why we've been charging flat rates for all 10 years that we've been in business. It's a flat monthly rate, and the pricing depends on how many locations you have, how many providers you have, and what product you're signing up for.
All right, a couple more here.
Sweet.
How long will the process to negotiate take for an acquisition on existing practice on average? If the previous seller had contract relations with the insurances, how do you go about removing them?
That's a good question. On an acquisition, the timing is a little bit different. Depends on where you're at in the acquisition timeline. So if you've already acquired the practice and you've already established and re-credentialed that location of those doctors under a new tax ID number, you've kind of set yourself in stone under those new contracts. So you may have limited your opportunities to negotiate, but you can still optimize. So there's still things on the table. If you're about to acquire and haven't made any official credentialing changes yet, you still have some opportunity on the table. Because you're coming in under a new tax ID number, PPOs will respond to offers to negotiate historically more quickly than if you were an established practice. So that can be anywhere from, we've seen 4 to 6 weeks. So anywhere from 30 to 60, even up to 90 days to get them to respond back to those requests for an offer to participate with them. So again, it just depends, but that's part of the consultation. If you're in the middle of an acquisition, pre-acquisition, or you've already acquired and made the credentialing switch, we have a specific department that revolves around acquisitions and new builds. So you would get assigned to somebody on that team that works with practices in that scenario. That's one of the beauties of how it works. So the consultation is going to be with somebody that's worked with those practices before and is actively working with those, so they can help coach you through what your options are. If you have limited options based on what your timing is and things like that. So the timing though can vary anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks at the earliest, all the way up to 90 days or more, if depending on the insurance company. So that's something I would hop on a call and talk to them. There's about 4 or 5 people on that team. So you may get like Rachel or Kelly or Sid. They're great. Their clients love them. You're going to talk to them and they're going to be the ones that will help you because they work with acquisitions right now. Cool.
All right. Last question I am seeing. What is the report that we can get from Henry Schein that gives the fees for our area to make sure we are competitive?
So I think what they're asking is either how do I get that report or how does Schein get the data for that report?
Maybe
so in either of those scenarios, and am I answering that correctly, Adam?
Maybe if you know both, might as well.
So how you get your hands on that report, there's 2 ways you can get your hands on that report. You can go directly to your individual Henry Schein rep and purchase that report on your own. If you work with us, it's included in the service at no charge. Either way, you can get your hands on that report. How that data is drawn is pretty accurate. And the reason why is because Henry Schein owns Dentrix. They own a couple of their claims batching companies. So they use that data aggregated together to create a database of average fees or average UCRs per practice. That's why we work with Schein for that data, is because we believe it's one of the most, if not the most accurate data set, because they have access to tens of thousands of practices claim submission data every year. So they're able to create that data set to know what the average practice is billing out for their UCR. Thus, they can tell you how do your UCRs compare to other UCRs in your area. That's why we feel it's not only accurate, but definitely something to use when preparing to negotiate. So number one, you can get your hands on it, reach out to your Henry Schein rep, or if you talk to us and we do a consultation, you work with us, that's included as well. Okay.
Cool. And then the last question here, how do you compare? How does Unitas Dental compare to your competitors?
That is a great question. So I can't speak directly to competitors that work in our space, but one of our main differentiating factors is probably going to be our time, our expertise, and kind of who backs us. So we've been doing it for about 10 years. We've worked with thousands of practices. We have a high success rate and a high satisfaction rate. Not only that, but we bring thousands and thousands of new doctors to PPOs every year. Because of that, because we help credential thousands of new doctors, that brings us to the table with insurance companies that normally smaller negotiators couldn't get to the table with because they don't have any carrots to bring to the insurances. So for us, we have a lot of leverage and a lot of expertise that we think sets us apart. But also, one of our biggest backers, obviously, is Henry Schein. Henry Schein, obviously, if you're on this webinar today, I'm assuming you've purchased things or are actively purchasing and are in partnership with Henry Schein. Henry Schein is one of the largest dental supply companies in the world. Because of that, they vet annually other players in this space. They understand who the other players are in the space, and we continue to win out on satisfaction, on results, on experience, and on delivery. So for us, we feel like that certification from Henry Schein, that we're their sole solution for this, is one of the biggest pieces of credibility that we can provide beyond just, again, what our process is, what our results are, and how many years we've been in business. So when you're looking at a PPO negotiator, we feel like obviously credibility, trust, accountability, and results are some of those important things. It's a lot like hiring a CPA or an attorney. How do you know who the best attorney is or who the best CPA is? A lot of practices might evaluate it based on pricing, but in many situations, like you found, I'm sure, with a CPA or an attorney, is you typically get what you pay for and you don't get what you don't pay for. And at the end of the day, it comes down to who do you trust and who's got the accountability and the results and the leverage to get you the best results, whether they're a CPA, an attorney, or a PPO negotiator like us. So that's what we feel like differentiates us and why we're a good fit. And hop on a call with us and find out if you like us. And we'd love to talk to you as well and see if it's a good fit. And if you don't want to work with us, that's okay. That's part of the webinar. We've given you basically the whole playbook here. We'll also give you some extra tools. So fill us out and see if we're a good fit for you.
Well, I trust you.
That's good.
I've listened to you enough. I know you know what you're talking about.
I appreciate it, Adam. And I appreciate everybody for attending this. I know this has been busy, but hopefully this has been helpful info for you. And feel free to schedule a call. Go to ppguide.com. Make sure you put the /go in there and you schedule time with us. We'd love to chat with anybody.
Excellent. Well, thanks again, Philip. We did record the webinar tonight, so we'll send that out probably early next week if I had to guess. But yeah, that's it. If you want to attend future Henry Schein webinars, we just released our first set for 2022. So you can visit henryscheindental.com/webinars. Unitas will be back next year with all new content. And yeah, everyone have a great night. Thanks for attending and happy holidays.
Awesome. Thanks, Adam. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.